Hello everyone, welcome back to this showcase episode from the Aurelia city in City Skylines. So after we finished this second half of the city, the suburbs, I decided to do this overview episode with the little time lapse at the start that you could have seen. It was just a collection of all the shots of the before and after shots that I made when I was doing these episodes. So that kind of nicely showed you, that nicely summarized the entire process that we did on this, like I said, second half of the city. So eventually it became quite large. I think that this part of the city is pretty much 50% of the entire build area that we did. Definitely, if we count the airport that we can see here, it's probably even more than that. Although I consider the airport to be slightly disconnected from this place, right? Anyway, we are going to now see some overall shots of all this that we have built in the past couple of months, really. And I'm also going to, in the second half of the video, return to the downtown of the city, to the core, to those all the older areas that we have built a really long time ago, to kind of remind ourselves of how the city actually looks like, because we will eventually return to the first half of the city on the other side of the river, because we need to continue working on that part of the city. So on this side of the airport, where the airport is, we are pretty much done. I also did, if you remember, a couple of months ago, I did that episode where we did some changes to the landscaping of the map, edges of the map mostly. And I talked about how the city kind of needs to grow, where it needs to grow. And we finished that. We finished that on this part of the map where the airport is, that we can see right here. So I did some landscaping before the airport, between the city and the airport. You can see that there are some like ridges with trees and stuff. So that's all done. That's all completely done. One thing that is still missing is that little peninsula that goes from the suburb area. But that's something that we will focus on in some later episodes after we do some kind of building in the downtown first, because I really want to just do something slightly different. We have been doing the suburbs mostly right now, but I really want to go back to those like vertical projects in the center. So that's something I really want to focus on. Anyway, what are we seeing over here? So a couple of shots from the airport. I really like the airport. Eventually, it was a very nice project. It was taking a bit too long for my taste. I usually want to do projects slightly smaller in scale, but the airport was obviously absolutely huge. But eventually, it turned out looking great. It has a couple of smaller sub projects in it. It obviously has the terminal. It has even this interchange can be considered part of the airport project. This six-way interchange that eventually got changed slightly, but it still is a very impressive thing. You could have also seen the cargo airport terminal that we have built, kind of like a futuristic design that I really wanted to put in the airport. That was actually a project that I had in mind for quite a long time, maybe even slightly before I started building the airport itself. This is the terminal of the airport that we have started with. I was not really sure how to do it. Eventually I chose some couple of buildings that I just clipped together to make some interesting shapes, played around with the procedural objects to create, for example, those orange elements here and there on the airport. So eventually that turned out looking really good. This is the place that we started with. If you remember, if you even remember a couple of minutes ago when you saw the time lapse, this is the first project that we did on the other side of the river, not counting the airport, of course. So this was the transfer station between this light rail that we can see going up here and the trams that are going across the river and continuing towards that terminus station right in front of the airport terminal. So I really like that place. That's definitely one of my favorite places of this entire district. All these kinds of transfer stations between the lines are just very nice looking, because they are always a very good opportunity to do some vertical stuff. I usually don't do like crossings between these different tracks, especially if it's like a light rail and a tram, different vehicles. So, it's always going to be multiple levels. It's always going to be nice and vertical. But there are more examples of that. I think we're going to see that right now. Oh yes, there we go. That's the plaza that's directly below this light rail station. Definitely played a lot with the building selection over here, especially that building that has that cutout in that first floor. That definitely fit this place very nicely. And this is probably my favorite place of the entire area, because again, it's just the transfer station, but this time it's a transfer station between the buses, the light rail, and the trains. And obviously there's this highway also kind of winding between the buildings, so that's really nice. It also has the highway exit there, so very high density area, lots of little details, technical details, let's say, that made that place just very interesting to build, and if I may say so myself, kind of interesting to look at as well. We continued then with this waterfront. I did that plaza in there with that tiny little river that joins the big one, the big river. The tiny stream goes from those lakes that you could have seen in that overall shot in front of the airport, and even in the time lapses, so the stream kind of makes a bit more sense. We continued mostly around this main avenue. It has the light rail tracks going on it, and eventually we reached this very old project, which is the residential bridge. So the residential bridge lacked the second half of it, because I was just not sure how to end it before we started expanding this overall area. But eventually we did it, we finished it, and again we did a nice little public transfer station, because there were already trams going on the bridge, and I had to just make them I had to make them go into this area somewhere, obviously, and it was going on the bridge, which was very tall, and we already had that light rail going or aiming underneath it. So again, nice opportunity to do something like that. Another project that I'm kind of proud of is the public transport depot, and together with a public transport hub again. It's kind of on the edge of the city. I think I was talking about that since it is on the edge of the city, it makes sense that there is some kind of a bus terminal where even some long-range buses might arrive to, and people can just easily switch to the train, which is very quickly going to take them all the way to the main train station right in the center and the core of the city. And also, it just felt nice to build some sort of a futuristic little project for the depot, because that's something we haven't done in the city. And as you can see, I did a couple of moving vehicles inside the depot, as you guys suggested in the comments. Overall, it's just a very nice project that fits this entire area. It's kind of minimalistic if you think about it. It's mostly underground. All the stuff is underground. I intentionally didn't want to build this place with any tall structures. The tallest building in here is the train station, after all. But all these residential buildings around it are just forming the high density and the high-rise feel of this suburb area, the suburb residential area. It's not really the low-density suburb area. There are a couple of medium-density apartment buildings, like 3 to 4 floor apartment buildings on the very edges of this place, but it's definitely not the low density. I am planning to do some very low density area right on that peninsula between the main river and that little artificial lake that we did in that landscaping video. I think you are probably going to see that in the next shot, which is going to take us back into the center. Yes, that's the peninsula right on the left side. It's quite large. I think I'm going to make it smaller eventually, but that's probably where some really low density suburbs are going to be, coupled with some other interesting projects that I have in mind. Anyway, as you can see, we are now moving back to the place where it all started. So let's take a look at that area, because it's something that I have neglected for quite a long time. So let's just refresh the memory and see what's been built over there. So right on the edges of the main part of the city, we have that big shopping mall, some infrastructure projects, some interchanges, exits. We also have that stadium area, the sports area, and the construction site right next to it, which is followed, or if you think about it, it's followed by the not so great looking areas, the kind of messy looking high density blocks that are pretty much right below the residential bridge. So I kind of wanted to make it look like the construction site is continuing a trend of maybe some renovations of the waterfront area, because maybe the stadium place was also renovated. It didn't exactly look like that before. The main landmark of the city, I suppose, is that park at the center of the downtown. So that's a very large park, and it has that eye in the center, which is also like a public transport station. There are the trams going there on those opposite roads. It was a very interesting project, that one. Also, we must not forget that on the very edges of the map there is that the dam project together with the boat lift. By the way, the boat lift, I think I can spoil it a tiny bit, that now that we have the procedural objects animations capabilities, and they are still continuously updated, I think I might do an episode where we are actually going to see the boat lift moving in real time. So that's just something that I'm planning to do. So stay tuned for that. I'm kind of waiting for more functionalities in procedural objects animations before I do that, but I definitely want to do that. Anyway, back into the downtown, or well, kind of the edges of the downtown. So this is the tip of the island that is inside the river, if you remember that. It's not finished. We are still in like 2/3, or we need to build like 2/3 of the island. But this tip of the island is looking very good. I really like how the tram station just is elevated above the place, and it kind of just moves the tracks along that place kind of more naturally, and it's just very walkable area. There are lots of shops, lots of residential places and stuff like that. This is the same tram line actually, because we are now going to just go closer and look at all these places in a bit more detail. So this was a very popular project. This was the shopping mall, and right on the sides of the shopping mall there is the start of this medium density residential area. Intentionally there is that like a sound barrier on top of the highway, and all these little blocks of residential buildings are mostly looking very similar to kind of symbolize that we are on the edges of the city, and some of these places are a bit more uniform, which is not really the case for the actual core of the city, right? So again, there is an elevated station right in front of the mall, and there is also a possibility to transfer to the ferries. The ferries right now only go from this place back to that tip of the island in the river, but eventually they might go somewhere else as well. I already did another ferry station all the way up the stream of the river, of that transfer station on the other side of the river, between before the airport that we have seen in the cinematics as well. But so far I haven't really put the ferry line there, but I can definitely do that easily. So that's like a third station for the ferries that we can use. But maybe I'm just going to build a couple more of them. It's mostly going to be like a sightseeing ferry. It's not really going to serve as an actual public transport option, because there are different kinds of options in the city. Anyway, moving from the shopping mall through the stadium area and the construction site all the way to the residential bridge. This is the continuation of the residential bridge into the mainland, and there's like a tram line that goes on the residential bridge. It cuts through this hill. I did this corridor, this little tunnel that cuts through the hill, and it eventually enters the park area. There's this arch and another transfer station between the light rail and the trams. You can probably tell that the city it just has a lot of trams and all these just rail public transport options, right? This is a place that I also very, very like. It's right on the edge of that hill. It's like a medium density residential area made with these very nice looking structures that I just kind of copy pasted into different shapes and put the grasses on the roofs and all kinds of details and did different levels. This is one of my most favorite places in the city, to be honest. Right on the edge of the park, closest to the core of the city, we did this roundabout. It's not really a roundabout, actually. It's just a circle, but as you can see, the main infrastructure just goes across this circular hole, circular sunken area, and there's just a normal intersection there. But it's just a circle. I really like doing circles in the city every once in a while, and especially in some of these more logical areas, in these junctions between not exactly infrastructure, but maybe just junctions between different styles of building, different styles of blocks. So on the edge of the park, it just makes sense to me. I don't know. But this is the very core of the city. This is the main big highway interchange. I'm not even sure how many ways there are, but that's the one that we have started the series with, and eventually we just started building all around it. To the left from this shot, there's nothing yet, so that's something that we need to continue working on. But that's probably going to be something that we will do more in the future, because right now I have plans to expand the core somewhere else slightly. We also have in the very center these elevated parks, these areas that are just flat with grass, kind of covering some of the already existing structures in the city. This is something also very, very old. These kinds of projects I did pretty much right after I started doing that main interchange, then the train station, and then we also did these places. These are the residential areas in the very center of the city. Very vertical, lots of different elevation levels in here. These different ponds are also at different levels, and there are all kinds of paths that are going between the levels, the stairs, elevators. It was a very, very fun time to do these kinds of places, but we're actually not done yet, because I would really like to return to this style and continue with this. So if you were a fan of that, then don't worry, it's not over yet. There's actually a tiny bit of a spoiler in that upper left corner for what's coming, because I was recording this cinematics when I already had that expansion, the future expansion, finished there. So maybe if you've paid attention there, you could have seen some glimpses of it. Anyway, this is the crater area that I actually built on stream long time ago. It kind of requires a couple of refurbishments, I suppose. I was losing some old networks back in the day. And finally, we have the island city. So that was just a crazy project that I really wanted to try. I wanted to build an airport. I wanted to just browse some different terminal buildings that I downloaded from the workshop. And I had this one. And I eventually decided that I'm just going to turn it into something completely different than airport. And I made it into this island city. It was at first not supposed to be in the water, but for some reason it made perfect sense to do that. And I just detailed and built all these edges of the island city. It kind of has like a star pattern. So on the edges of these rays from the center, I did all this detailing. Not really on all of them just yet, and also on the center area, which also needs some finishing touches here and there. So that's the island city. We still need to work on that. We still need to work on some landscaping around the island city. But I am definitely planning on doing, not exactly sure when, but I will do some kind of a landscaping video where we are going to do like a final change to the map before we are going to finish it. But that's kind of all for the future. I do have some plans for pretty much the rest of the map, really. So that's kind of nice. I really am confident that we can finish the map without just running into the hard limits of the game. So hopefully we are going to see some overview episode from Aurelia when the city is completely done. Anyway, that's going to be all for today. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, if you want to help the video, help the channel, you can click the thumbs up button, leave some comment, or share the video, because the YouTube algorithm really likes that. You can also subscribe to the channel if you are new here. And also, huge thanks to all the people who chose to directly support the channel by becoming the channel members. If you want to become a channel member too, there is a link in the video description or the button below the video. I will see you next time with an Altengrad episode, and after that we will go back to the center of Aurelia to do some really high density futuristic projects. Take care and goodbye.